Hi everyone, and welcome to another Web Talk series here at Elemendar. My name is Renee and I'm the host for our Web Talk series. And today we are joined with Jon Geater, who has joined us as a non-executive director, which we are super excited about. And today I'll be having a chat with him to do with cybersecurity and also to do with, I guess, the way things are going within Elemendar and the experience he has as well within the security industry. Hi, Jon, how are you?
Great, thanks. How are you doing, Renee?
Good. Yeah, I'm good too. Nice to finally meet you virtually. I know we've been speaking online, but nice to see you in person. Well, not in person. So I thought the first thing I would do is ask you to just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do and the experience you have within cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and so on.
Yeah, great, thanks. So it's a very long story, so I'll try and give it the short version. I've been at the sharp end of cybersecurity for a bit over 20 years now. And one of the really great things about working in security is that you get to help an awful lot of people. So I've done all kinds of things from embedded silicon chips right up to airports, smart grid systems, self-driving cars, that kind of thing. But yeah, my potted history, I've been CTO of hardware security modules company, so looking after high value transactions, payments, that kind of thing. I was at Arm, CTO of the secure services division, and there what we were looking at doing was taking kind of amazing technology in silicon chips and turning it into real solutions that people can really use. From there, I went to be CTO and founder of a company called Trustonic, which provides technology called trusted execution for things like cell phones, making sure that rooted phones or hacked phones and things don't give up your biggest secrets. That's always very fun. So I went from selling one enormous thing a year to selling 1 billion tiny things a year. That's kind of fun. And then most recently, I was at Thales, so big aerospace defense company.
Yeah.
Looking at problems with all kinds of big systems, as I say, smart cities, airports, self-driving vehicles, drones, that kind of thing. And so what I presently do, I'm CTO and founder of a company called Jitsuin, and we provide continuous assurance as a service for critical assets. So this is kind of filling in a big gap that we found with connected systems, what people like to call Industry 4.0 or digital transformation. Every individual player in that system, they might have great security, but when you plug those things together, you've got to understand each other and you've got to be able to sort of believe and trust and work with that whole system and all the stakeholders. We provide assurance services that say, yeah, it's not just each person is fine, but the whole system is trustworthy and operating well and safely.
Very interesting. And we'll come back to Jitsuin actually slightly later on. So I think leading on from that, my second question would probably have to be, why would you say information security or cybersecurity is so crucial for different companies, organizations, enterprises, irrespective of their size? Because I think sometimes there's this misconception that, we're not a big enough company for security to be such an issue. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm sure you've dealt with different types of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a couple of different angles. So for the individual small company who thinks it doesn't matter to them, I think we need to stop thinking about security as some magic thing or some sort of luxury thought experiment for big companies. The way that the media pushes things, all you ever think about is the huge hacks, the nation state stuff, the terrorists, whatever. And that's obviously an important thing to consider, and there are people who dedicate very good lives and careers to solving those problems, but those are not the problems that happen terribly often, right? For every one of those, there are millions of tiny mistakes or small hacks or opportunists, or even an awful lot of ransomware attacks are basically accidents. Somebody sets off a campaign, just forgets to turn it off, and now a whole bunch of people get hit and they can't even pay a ransom because there's nobody there on the other end of the line to listen anymore. So if we forget about security as being this big bombastic Hollywood thing, and instead you just think of it as, does my stuff work? If I turn my computer on in the morning, is it going to give me my Word documents, or is it going to give me a ransom demand? that's the way to think about it. So no company is too small for security, definitely not. But also you have to kind of frame what your risk is. So obviously, if you're a huge bank with millions or billions of other people's money at stake, you will have a different lens on what security means versus if you're a small retailer of, boutique crocheting hooks or something. Yeah, but everybody has a security challenge. Everybody has risks in their business, and deploying the correct information security it's not a nerdy thing. It's not esoteric. It's just a cost of doing business to make sure my business is going to run better and cheaper and more efficiently and more reliably if I put this in place, just the same as you have locks on your doors and everything else. So that's Definitely. One thing. The other thing, a completely different angle, but I think it's worth mentioning here, is that where we do see the big attacks, where we've seen a lot of these things like Kaseya most recently, it's lunchtime on the 5th of August today. So when I say most recently, there's your reference. But things like Kaseya, things like SolarWinds that are very fresh in people's memories in mid 2021. Those were essentially supply chain attacks. The big people who got hit and the big effects, they didn't create that software. They didn't put those systems in place. They didn't make the mistake. They weren't attacked. The attacks happened further down in the small guys who were part of that supply chain that eventually built the big system, which is a really juicy attack target. So the other thing to consider is, for your own purposes, no company is too small for cybersecurity, but also bear in mind that, from tiny acorns, mighty oak trees grow, and the tiny acorn of a small bug in a small piece of a small supplier's software can ripple through and cause very major impacts further down the supply chain. So it's another reason to really think about it, no matter how big you are.
Definitely, and you've touched on a lot there, but I think one thing is a definite takeaway, realizing what risks to manage depending on your company size. But overall, it should be something everyone should be dealing with within their company organization. I think another thing I wanted us to touch on is, I guess, the whole idea of artificial intelligence and machine learning when it comes to cybersecurity. What are your thoughts on using this, or should I say, what are the benefits? Because I know you are obviously an advocate of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
It's a huge topic, obviously, and cybersecurity of artificial intelligence is a completely different thing. I do work on that as well. We have some, particularly in the kind of connected smart infrastructure space. You can't have human beings at every infrastructure waving through the self-driving vehicles and moving them along. So that in itself is a fascinating topic. But I think the right place to look here is more in the places where Elemendar are working in particular, and others, of course, to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, all of these techniques to make the job of the security team easier, or to pinpoint what you're trying to do, because it's actually got a really nice parallel with the Jitsuin mission, with my personal beliefs about how stuff should work. Is that we have a very limited set of experts who, given a really sticky situation, can quickly find a solution, go and fix it, and avert a disaster. And a lot of those experts' time, whether it's a cyber analyst or whether it's a maintenance person or whether it's a nuclear engineer, their time is spent checking stuff that's fine. They go around and they do their rounds and they look at a thing and they say, are you patched? Yes, I am. Is your model working? Yes, it is. Have you got any faults? No, you haven't. Great, tick. And you fill in a piece of paper and you file that away to somebody. And that was time, expert brain power that was completely wasted checking something that was fine, because you're looking for the problem. So you're hunting through all of this information, trying to find that one place where you need to concentrate and fix something.
Yeah.
And a really great thing that we need to do, and that artificial intelligence and machine learning, and particularly kind of read products that can work out what's going on with the best available information, is to cut out all that mundane work and cut out all of the sort of wasted time where you're looking at things that are okay, and very quickly guide you towards where the real problem is. Because I don't believe for a second that AI can, in any reasonable time, replace the ultimate skilled job that a cyber analyst or somebody can do, or somebody with the very rare but valuable combination of understanding cybersecurity and crypto and OPSEC and all of that stuff, and also know how their business works and what the risk appetite of their customers is and how much budget they've got. That's just too hard, it's too inefficient, it's too unique to code into a model. So that's never going away. But how do you make sure those people are best deployed with the best available information with the least wasted time? I think ML and AI guiding those, having the analyst in the loop, but being guided by really good fed information will really help us to to accelerate. Because the better your cyber experts are, the more efficient they work, actually the more opportunities you have to do more stuff. This isn't just about being more secure. This is about having the freedom to operate a smarter, faster, more digital business.
Definitely. And leading on from, I guess, artificial intelligence and still having some form of human author touch to finding out what the threats are. You touched on analyst in the loop. Why do you think it's vital that we still do keep both sides of the coin? I know you definitely expressed how much knowledge a human can have on something, but then we also backed it up with the fact that timing is obviously critical when dealing with cybersecurity. But why marrying them together is that the perfect match for dealing with threats? So AI and...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you have to think about consequences of actions, right? So one thing that people are really scared of with digital transformation in general is, what if a computer makes a decision that we don't like? And this ranges the whole way from, somebody's CV gets rejected early all the way through to military concerns. And we hear these at least once a week on the regular news. So this is a real people concern these days.
Yeah.
Now, as long as you've got some oversight in actually making the decision and actually causing a real world effect, people are much more willing to accept those things. They kind of trust humans. And this is, frankly, I've written articles before, you can really find on the internet, about how much I trust human drivers versus machine drivers. It's not necessarily objective truth, but there's definitely a strong element of acceptance to having a human arbitrator of the final actual decision. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
But if we require the human to do the entire process, from receiving some kind of threat report to reading it, to working it out, to cross-referencing it with the other 46 threat reports they got that morning, to then triaging what they might do, to then deciding what they will do, well, they're not going to do anything. And that's just a disaster. Like, so you have to make sure that we use people for what they're best at, and we use AI for what it's best at. And in particular, since you mentioned Reed again, the thing that I really hate the most in the world is the same job being done twice. You did not need more than one expert to read one particular threat report, label it, work out what it means, and send it down the line for analysis or remediation or action. And so, even worse than that, if you've got one person in every single company who is doing that same job of reading that report and working out and labeling it, that's just a waste. That's just inefficient, and frankly, that bugs me. You should get rid of that because it's not necessary. So that combination, you've obviously got the expertise of. I just don't think that AI or ML in any reasonable near-term time frame is going to be able to actually make the final best decision. You might as well give that to a proper learned human to do. But a huge amount of that guidance and working out where the issue is and working out where to apply that human skill, is much better done by high-speed parallel machine actors.
Definitely would agree with you. I guess leading on slightly back to what you spoke about in the very beginning with Jitsuin, can you tell us a bit more about that and how that is having an impact on the, I guess, security industry itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Jitsuin offers continuous assurance as a service. And what that means essentially is moving the world on from when you think of assurance cases, this is security cases, safety cases. Is my lift safe to carry passengers in a hotel, that kind of thing. We're moving the world on from once a year, or even maybe once every 2 years, getting a one-time snapshot view of whether the thing they think they're running is probably safe and fit for purpose, to a world where you can look in pretty much real time and make decisions about whether the thing you are actually running right now is actually fit for purpose, no matter whether the software has changed, the threat landscape has changed, your business landscape has changed, or the regulatory landscape has changed. Because what you see with old mechanical systems, which is where a lot of our industrial regulation and laws and rubber stamps and things come from, in the old industrial landscape, it was fine to validate a steam engine or a bridge design, or even a clutched elevator in a hotel, because nothing changes. So as long as it was designed well, you're okay.
Yeah.
With any kind of connected industry, with software, with computers, with the internet, with systems where the road company and the government and the car company and the tolling company and the entertainment company are all interacting together, that world just changes far, far too fast. And trying to keep up with that, trying to patch your software every Tuesday, and then also get the auditors in, and then get it signed off, and then get everything set, it just doesn't scale. So what we do is we connect together all of the stakeholders in these connected systems. They all do their individual job the same way that they ever would, because everybody basically wants to do a good job. But while they're doing that, all of those invisible problems that plague people with cyber updates, anytime you look at the big ransomware attacks, almost always the problem was somebody knew there was an issue with the software, but they didn't tell the people who were running the Windows laptops. And then those guys get hit with the ransomware because they weren't updated and they weren't able to make a sensible risk decision. So we join all of these stakeholders together. We give them all of the salient information to check their risk posture in real time against the changing and evolving threat landscape, and make a smart decision about whether they're safe to operate, whether they're at risk, or whether they actually need to do something right now in order to stay not only kind of compliant, which is super important, but genuinely secure and genuinely safe for their current circumstances. And I think this is actually really, really related to what Elemendar is doing. It's the same thing. What we're doing is we want to stay up to date with the latest threat information, the latest threat landscape, and the latest real security problems, not the security problems that somebody thought of 10 years ago in a regulatory review.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was going to say, it sounds like the word real time is something that's very critical within the whole cybersecurity world and realm. And I remember seeing a quote which basically talks about how, this is me paraphrasing it, cyber threats are literally running at a different clock to human time. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it sounds pretty evident at this point that it's just, we're not in the same time scales when threats are coming in.
Absolutely. I mean, some of what I work on day to day is extremely industrial, right? So we have some programs running in the nuclear industry, and we have some programs running in the automotive industry. And I don't for a second suggest that these people ever did a bad job of their security or safety. There are incredibly skillful, dedicated people who check all their forms, they go through all their lists, and they do all their round and stuff, and they do a great job. And that's why we don't have terribly many disasters. In the grand scheme of things, they do a great job. But it is just impossible to have those structures that were put in place, things like change control boards and things like approval boards, and things like design authority, to put together an approved configuration, then you have it signed off by 5 people, and then you get it validated and stamped by somebody in the government. Those work if you can afford to have your system change once every 6 months at the very most, probably once every 12 months.
Yeah.
Those systems do not work once you introduce software, and particularly once you introduce a software supply chain where you've got sort of small vendors who also come into a bigger system, who then come into your facility, because then you're faced with this absolutely dreadful choice. You can't convene a meeting of your 20 top executives every morning to decide which software patches to take or not.
Yeah.
So if you stay with the old systems, what that means is you can either be compliant because you're running with your approved configuration with those approved versions, or you can be secure because you're watching this stuff and making smart choices and updating things, but you can't be both at the same time. And that just doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. There is a need, and it's always really been there, but we got away with it before. But there is absolutely a need now to move from static assurance cases where you run through a checklist and it says, yeah, you probably designed this okay, off you go. Moving from that to a set of dynamic assurance cases where you actually look at what have I got here, what's my threat environment, and am I still comfortable that those match up in the right kind of way.
Definitely would agree with you with that. So my final question for you would probably be, if there are companies or organizations perhaps watching who are maybe a bit more conscious of not wanting to make a very quick decision with trying to change their maybe security operational team, etc., or fund a completely new product or system into their company, but you from the outside looking in would say this is really, really important, or you guys definitely should do this. What would you say to them?
Absolutely. So I think, well, the first thing to note is that I'm a tech guy, right? I do no sales. So I wouldn't sell them anything. So yeah, going in and telling somebody they should change, I just don't do that. But I think the thing to go back to is, again, to think about what does security mean? Right? We got this industry now that's grown up in the last sort of 25, 30 years, which has kind of made security belong to the IT folks. And then that has become an idea that essentially security is a firewall budget. And I think the thing that you really need to turn around is say, no, security has absolutely nothing to do with technology. It has absolutely nothing to do with information, actually. It has to do with whether your business runs better, with less risk, with higher profits, if you prepare it in that way versus if you don't. Right? And you know, in whatever 500 years ago, if your business was storing grain for people, you would have a better storing grain business if you made steps to keep rats out of your granary than if you just let the rats run free. And it's no different now. The fact is that we use computers and information is hugely important to businesses. So we kind of focus around that. But the thing to talk to these people about is, what is your business objective? Right. Your business objective is to grow this top line or is to operate some better service. Right. Well, reasonably, in most sectors today, the only way to do that is to digitize. You have to take advantage of computers. You have to take advantage of information. You have to take advantage of digital channels.
Yeah.
Right. Now, how well do you think your business is going to run if you connect your systems up to the internet and you don't take a realistic view of security, which is not to do with your internal people configuring firewalls, but it's to do with external people making mistakes and throwing things in that you weren't expecting? How far do you think your business is going to get if you don't take an appropriate view of your system security? And then, you know, you have the discussion with them, you have the discussion about what their hopes and dreams are, and pretty quickly you get to uncover the difference between people who actually want to secure their business and actually want to have secure operations, and the people who just want a compliance checklist and the fig leaf of a firewall around their system. and you know, that's fine, that's their choice. But you know, have that business discussion, work out what the operational requirements are. And then I think the responsibility and the moral responsibility of experts, such as Jitsuin or Elemendar, is to use that expertise to find where there's relevant business improvement and relevant safety improvement from applying these technologies into that business problem. And that's always where you should start.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's an excellent point to end on for the web talk. I'd say thank you so much. I've definitely learned a lot, and I hope those who are watching, listening in, have also learned a lot. If someone did want to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that? I know this is on LinkedIn and on YouTube, but would that be the best point of contact?
I get a lot of LinkedIns, so that might get lost.
Okay.
I think, for people who've sat this long through the webcast, I would definitely give out my real email address. So it's Jon.Geater, so JON.GEATER @jitsuin.com. So JITSUIN.com. And I'd definitely be happy to talk to folks about this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you again, everyone that's tuned in to another Web Talk series. I've been Renee, and today, as I said, I was joined with Jon Geater.
Great. Thanks, Renee.